number of Americans dying from drug overdoses is dramatically increasing. The CDC estimates overdoses killed more than 72,000 people last year. It has become the leading cause of death for Americans under the age of 50. We told you yesterday about news anchor Angela Kennecke of our CBS affiliate Kennecke in South Dakota. She has covered the overdose crisis for about 10 years now, but she lost her own daughter to the opioid epidemic just 4 months ago. Kennecke returned to work this week, and she says she felt an obligation to share her very personal story with her viewers.
The opioid epidemic has hit home in a tragic and devastating way for me personally. On May 16th, my 21-year-old daughter, Emily, died of an overdose.
Angela Kennecke spoke to her daughter for the last time on Mother's Day.
Go, Emily!
Go, Emily!
Emily struggled with addiction for more than a year. Angela tried to get her treatment, but says she was too late.
I got a frantic call from her dad saying, "I think Emily's OD'd. You need to get over here right now." I can't even describe to you what it's like to hear those words.
Emily overdosed on the opioid fentanyl in May. Angela spoke about her daughter's fight at her funeral.
Before her addiction crushed her real self, everyone who knew her was amazed by her gregarious personality.
After a few months off, Angela returned to the news desk to share her story in hopes of saving lives.
Angela is one of the strongest women I have ever met.
News director Beth Jensen said she knew Angela's story would resonate.
And the way she told that story was so authentic. It is already making a difference. And this crusade of Angela's is now a crusade of the stations, and it's going to be in our DNA for a long time.
Angela Kennecke wants to help erase the stigma around addiction. She joins us now. Angela, thank you so much. Because I'm so sorry you're here at the table for this reason, and I wonder, as a local news anchor, why you decided that you were going to share it so publicly. Was it a struggle for you to make this decision?
You know, I took a few months off just to kind of cope with what had happened to me, and I thought, I can let this loss, this devastation destroy me, or I can do something about it. And over the course of my career, I have asked so many parents to talk to me, and just people in general who are grieving, who have had horrible, tragic things happen to them, as you all do.
Yeah.
And I thought, I have to talk about it. I have an obligation to talk about it. My number one reason for talking about it is to erase the stigma that is surrounding addiction, especially the use of heroin, opioids.
You had no idea she was using heroin. This is what I marvel at, because you said you all were close. You knew she had had some drug issues, you said, with marijuana. But you, an investigative reporter, had no idea that she was using heroin.
It was the most shocking thing to me. Needles. She's a middle-class kid, privileged, you know, all these opportunities and things like that. And it's hard to explain addiction. It's hard to understand. My child ran out of the doctor's office once when she was going to get a shot, so I never would have dreamed that. But because it's hit home in such an awful, devastating way, I just feel so compelled to let everybody know what happened to my daughter can happen to you, can happen to your child. Well, you all have children at this table.
Was she just so good at hiding it from you? How were you able not to know that she was on heroin?
Well, so she was an adult child, 21 years old, not living at home. I thought she was on something, and I don't consider myself a naive person. I worked in the news business for a long time. I've covered a lot of these stories, but she was able to hide this from me very well, and I think as a child, you don't want your parents to be ashamed of you, and there is so much shame that goes along with this. You don't want to disappoint your parents, and I had to walk a very fine line between trying to help her, trying to talk to her, and alienating her or pushing her away. So I was always trying to approach it with love. We were working to get her help. I just didn't get there on time.
Angela, when you look back and have talked to other parents, have you found, what have you found that might have been either a gateway, or is there something or is it a mystery?
She was attracted to the drug culture, I think, in her later teen years. The peers, I think as parents, you know, we think we can isolate or insulate our children from these kinds of things. We do all kinds of things to try to protect them. But after a certain point, parents don't have as much influence, and peers have a lot more influence.
Yeah.
And, you know, your kid gets in, they say so cliche, but with the wrong crowd or the wrong people, and maybe they have a tendency toward that kind of thing, an addictive gene, an addictive personality, and it just snowballs.
And it's indiscriminate. And you said that you spent so many times talking to families that have suffered through this, and you went from asking, why me, to why not me? And that's something that families across the country are asking themselves as well. Talk about the stigma of going from why me to why not me.
Well, as a reporter, it's always somebody else that I'm reporting on. It's always somebody else's tragedy or triumph or whatever that may be.
And talk about reporting. You were interviewing women who had lost their children from drug overdose the day you found out your daughter died.
I was working on a story on the opioid epidemic, on overdoses and Good Samaritan laws in our state, and I spoke to 3 parents on that day. I knew my daughter had a problem on that day. We were planning an intervention. I just didn't know what it was she was using. And I just think we need so much more awareness. We need so much more, instead of judgment, compassion. And I'm going to do what I can to make changes in my own community back home, to get people the help that they need. And that's all really I can do with this.
It's so important. It's so important.
And your advice is, if you suspect, get in there and say something, because you said you were planning an intervention, you were too late.
Trust your
Parents must
instincts.
intervene.
Yes.
Trust your instincts. They very seldom fail you. Angela, thank you so much. I'm so sorry
You're welcome.
you're here under these circumstances, but really glad to meet you.